and may really finally be the absolute truth of life, but of how much we struggle to find other ways of making life happy for people. But if it's true, then I think that we have to accept the fact that man is a very limited kind of an animal.
When Hollywood's golden age dazzled the world, the stars on screen seemed untouchable, shimmering gods who could do no wrong. But behind the glitter was a darkness few dared to name. One man, however, broke the silence. Burt Lancaster, an actor admired for his integrity and his defiance of Hollywood's machine, allegedly left behind a secret journal. Inside it was a list, 14 names, not of friends, not of allies, but of Hollywood's most vicious predators, manipulators and tyrants. This wasn't idle gossip. Lancaster's words read like a curse, an indictment of the very legends who built Hollywood's golden image. From beloved heroes to America's sweethearts, no one was safe. Why would a man like Lancaster risk his reputation to expose them? And what kind of cruelty could drive him to label some of the biggest stars in history as monsters hiding in plain sight? We begin with the first name on that chilling list, a man the public adored as a hero, but whom Lancaster described with just 5 words: a predator beneath human skin. Kirk Douglas, predator, behind the hero. Kirk Douglas. To the world, he was the definition of strength. The gladiator, the rebel, the man who stood tall as Spartacus. On screen, he embodied honor, courage, and conviction. But Burt Lancaster claimed that away from the camera, Douglas's true character was anything but noble. In the journal, Lancaster's words were unflinching. Douglas wasn't a hero, he was a predator. Someone who manipulated, deceived, and destroyed without hesitation. His reign wasn't built on talent alone. Lancaster argued it was secured by fear. Lancaster accused Douglas of exploiting his power in casting rooms, coercing young actresses with promises of roles. Those who resisted weren't merely rejected, they were punished. Lancaster described one chilling case. In 1959, actress Lisa Avery was allegedly dropped from a high-profile film after declining a private dinner with Douglas. It wasn't chance, Lancaster insisted. It was retaliation, and it went deeper. Douglas, Lancaster claimed, controlled more than careers. He used influence, substances, and intimidation to bend directors and producers into submission. To oppose him was to risk exile, or worse, to find yourself in a scandal engineered to destroy you. The world saw Spartacus, a man who fought oppression. Lancaster saw something darker, a man who thrived on it. But if Douglas's story already leaves a bitter taste, Lancaster's next revelation strikes even closer to the heart of Hollywood's tragic legends. Because the second name on his list was a woman adored for her fragility, whose very death still haunts Hollywood to this day. 2. Natalie Wood, master manipulator, who cried on cue. To the world, Natalie Wood was a fragile flower, the girl with the haunting eyes, the tragic beauty who could make audiences weep with a single glance. But in Lancaster's telling, that fragility was nothing more than a mask. Behind it, he claimed, was one of Hollywood's most cunning manipulators. Lancaster wrote that Natalie mastered the art of performance off-screen, as well as on. He described one infamous moment on set when she staged a fainting spell, collapsing dramatically in front of the cameras. Production shut down for 10 hours. Everyone thought she was ill, but according to Lancaster, it was deliberate. A carefully planned act to pressure the director into firing a co-star she didn't like. Her tactics, he claimed, created a climate of fear. No one wanted to cross her, because no one knew how far she'd go to get her way. Lancaster even suggested that Natalie's tragic death in 1981 wasn't just an accident. In his chilling words, the sea didn't kill her, it only concealed what she left behind on shore. To Lancaster, Natalie Wood wasn't a victim of fate. She was a master of manipulation who built a web so dangerous it eventually ensnared her. But Lancaster's journal warned that manipulation didn't always look so delicate. Sometimes it wore a smile that hid cruelty sharp enough to cut a person down in front of an entire room. 3. Mickey Rooney, the verbal sadist behind the smile. Mickey Rooney was Hollywood's golden boy. He made audiences laugh, played the charming rogue, the lovable everyman. But Lancaster painted a very different picture. Behind the cameras, he claimed Rooney was a verbal sadist, a man who took pleasure in mocking, humiliating, and breaking down the people around him. Lancaster recalled how Rooney would single out background actors, sneering at their clothes, their hair, even their weight, all while the crew watched in uncomfortable silence. What was a joke to the public was cruelty to those unlucky enough to be near him. But Lancaster's accusations went further. In his personal life, Rooney allegedly treated his wives not as partners, but as servants. Lancaster described marriages that were more like prisons, where Rooney ruled with emotional manipulation and violence. There were whispers of slaps, of humiliations in public and in private, of partners trapped in cycles of fear with no way out. The public saw the boy next door. Lancaster saw a man who weaponized laughter and charm, turning them into tools of cruelty. And if Rooney's temper was loud, Lancaster said the next star's fury was volcanic. 4. Elizabeth Taylor, the storm behind violet eyes. Elizabeth Taylor, the very name evokes glamour. The violet eyes, the diamonds, the scandalous romances. She was Hollywood's queen, adored by millions. But according to Lancaster's journal, her reign was built not on beauty, but on intimidation. In 1962, while filming Cleopatra at Cinecittà Studios in Rome, Lancaster claimed Taylor shut down the entire production for 14 hours. The reason? A co-star had dared to wear a dress the same color as hers. Locked in her dressing room, Taylor refused to emerge until the actress was reprimanded. When the director pleaded with her to return to set, she hurled a glass of wine at his face. Lancaster wrote that Taylor's fury wasn't occasional. It was calculated. She allegedly used her marriages to Mike Todd, Richard Burton, and others, not as unions of love, but as power plays. Each relationship was another way to expand her influence, to bend producers and executives to her will. She didn't just play Cleopatra, Lancaster noted coldly. She lived it. But tantrums weren't the only weapons in Hollywood. For some, alcohol and rage became the sharpest tools of all. 5. Spencer Tracy, devil in the dressing room. To audiences, Spencer Tracy was a giant of acting, a man of depth, dignity, and commanding presence. But Lancaster's words stripped that image away. According to him, Tracy was a devil in the dressing room. His drinking wasn't just a personal struggle. It was a weapon. Lancaster described nights when Tracy would stagger into the makeup chair, bottle in hand, waiting for the smallest mistake to set him off. In one shocking account during the filming of Judgment at Nuremberg, Tracy allegedly smashed a liquor bottle on the makeup table, simply because the artist had applied powder too heavily. Lancaster went further, claiming Tracy wielded intimidation like a second skin. He would threaten, coerce, and even violate personal boundaries to keep others in line. He could switch from saintly smiles to violent outbursts in moments, leaving those around him terrified of which Tracy they'd face that day. He could play the holy man, Lancaster wrote bitterly, then threatened to end his life just to force someone else to obey. If Tracy's demons were fueled by rage, Lancaster claimed the next star destroyed others with something far colder: silence. 6. James Stewart, the judging manipulator. Few names shone as brightly as James Stewart. He was the good man, the moral compass of films like It's a Wonderful Life and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. To generations, he was decency itself. But Lancaster's journal painted a far colder portrait. Stewart, he claimed, was no innocent hero. He was a calculating manipulator, a man who sat quietly, observed everything, and then used it as a weapon. Lancaster described how Stewart would take notes on his co-stars during shoots, recording their mistakes, their weaknesses. Later, those notes would land on the director's desk, discreetly handed over by Stewart himself. Careers, Lancaster suggested, were ruined not by accident, but by Stewart's pen. And then came a darker revelation. Lancaster accused Stewart of refusing to work with black actors, not by raging openly, but by cleverly shifting the blame to script requirements. It was manipulation disguised as politeness, leaving no one brave enough to challenge him. Stewart didn't need to shout. He didn't need to rage. His power was in silence, in creating a room so cold that no one dared to move. But if Stewart's cruelty was cloaked in quiet judgment, Lancaster claimed the next name on his list was chaos incarnate, a star whose fragility became Hollywood's most destructive weapon. 7. Marilyn Monroe. The black hole that swallowed Hollywood. Marilyn Monroe. To the public, she was vulnerably personified, the girl who seemed too fragile for this world, the eternal blonde bombshell. But Lancaster wrote that this image was one of Hollywood's greatest lies. Behind the innocence, he claimed, Monroe was ruthless. She allegedly disappeared from sets for hours, sometimes days, holding entire productions hostage. Directors begged, crews waited in silence, and costs skyrocketed. All because Monroe had learned that her absence gave her more power than her presence, and she wielded that fragility like a weapon in her relationships. Lancaster claimed she manipulated powerful producers through staged breakdowns and calculated crises. In one chilling account, she allegedly threatened a collapse in front of a studio boss unless a rival actor was removed from her project. She didn't just pretend to be weak, Lancaster wrote. She turned weakness into dominance. But if Monroe's chaos was a black hole, swallowing everything around her, Lancaster's next name was no less terrifying, a star whose glamour concealed a predator without limits. 8. Errol Flynn. Demon in glamour. Errol Flynn was Hollywood's wildest rogue. With a smile that melted hearts and swordplay that thrilled audiences, he was the ultimate swashbuckler. But Lancaster's words stripped away the romance. Flynn, he claimed, was no carefree adventurer. He was a predator. Behind the closed doors of his Hollywood parties, Lancaster alleged, was a world of excess, corruption, and cruelty. Substances flowed, violence erupted, and those who crossed him were silenced by fear or by the power of Flynn's connections. Lancaster even wrote of Flynn's brushes with the law. He was once arrested, he claimed, on trafficking charges, only to walk free after a few phone calls. Wealth and influence erased consequences, allowing Flynn to return to his shadowy world as if nothing had happened. He wasn't Robin Hood, Lancaster said bitterly. He was the sheriff, robbing everyone blind. But while Flynn's sins were hidden behind glittering parties, Lancaster argued that the next name on his list concealed cruelty where it hurt most, inside the home. 9. Bing Crosby. The master of submission. Bing Crosby's voice defined an era. Smooth, calm, reassuring. He was America's crooner, the gentle father figure of song. But Lancaster's account revealed a very different Bing when the spotlight dimmed. Behind closed doors, Lancaster claimed Crosby's charm gave way to cold cruelty. He allegedly ruled his home with psychological torment, breaking his children not with fists, but with fear. Lancaster described how Crosby would use silence and a single icy glare to reduce his sons to trembling shadows. One horrifying story recounted Bing forcing his son Gary to stand outside in the freezing cold without a shirt as punishment for a poor grade. Years later, Gary himself confirmed his father's abuse, writing, "I'd rather be the son of anyone, even a criminal, than his." To Lancaster, Crosby was the embodiment of hidden torment, a man who sang of love while spreading pain at home. But the story didn't end with Bing. Lancaster's journal claimed the cruelty he inflicted didn't just scar his children, it grew inside them. 10. Gary Crosby. The twisted reflection. Gary Crosby was born into privilege, but according to Lancaster, he inherited something far darker. His father's cruelty. Beaten down as a boy, Gary grew into a man consumed by rage. Lancaster accused him of turning his trauma outward, repeating the cycle of abuse. Girlfriends allegedly suffered under his violent temper. Directors, too, faced his wrath. One story described Gary smashing a producer's windshield, simply for excluding him from a dinner. There were whispers of substance abuse, of dangerous circles, of random outbursts that left people bruised and broken. Lancaster's words were haunting. Evil isn't always born. It is taught, until it runs in your blood. Gary Crosby, in Lancaster's eyes, wasn't just a victim. He was proof that cruelty once learned can live on long after its source is gone. But if Gary's story was tragic, Lancaster said the next Hollywood figure's cruelty was quieter, more calculated, and all the more terrifying for it. 11. Henry Fonda, the invisible judge of Hollywood. Henry Fonda was the face of righteousness. In The Grapes of Wrath and 12 Angry Men, he stood as a symbol of fairness, of justice itself. But Lancaster's journal tore down that image. Fonda didn't destroy people with his hands, he wrote. He destroyed them with silence. According to Lancaster, Fonda ruled through coldness. He didn't rage or threaten. He didn't need to. A single disapproving look, a refusal to speak, and colleagues found their confidence shattered. Lancaster suggested that some actors spiraled into depression, even to the brink of ending their lives, after enduring Fonda's quiet disapproval. Even his own family bore the weight. Jane Fonda later admitted her father's love felt distant, conditional, forever hidden beneath a wall of judgment. He was a hero on screen, but at home, Lancaster said, he was a ghost of a father, and the Fonda shadow didn't end with Henry. Lancaster's pen turned to his daughter Jane, and the accusations grew even more explosive. 12. Jane Fonda, the brainwasher, behind the angelic face. Jane Fonda was bold, outspoken, a star who challenged norms. To her supporters she was brave, but in Lancaster's telling, she was ruthless. On one set he claimed, Jane demanded a cameraman be fired simply because he didn't share her political views. When her demand was denied, she allegedly threatened to hold a press conference, ready to accuse the entire crew of discrimination unless she got her way. Lancaster described Jane as someone who didn't need fists or fury. She weaponized her fame and her causes. If you weren't with her, he wrote, you were her enemy. She created divisions, forcing colleagues to choose sides. Those who refused to comply risked being shamed, canceled, or exposed in the press. Lancaster painted her as a master of psychological warfare, a star who could destroy reputations with nothing more than a microphone. But while Jane's power was in ideology, Lancaster claimed the next star used something far more brutal, violence itself. 13. Joan Crawford, violence as control. Joan Crawford was Hollywood royalty, the glamorous star of the silver screen, admired for her beauty, envied for her success. But Lancaster's journal described her private life as a nightmare. Her daughter Christina had already revealed horrifying stories, beatings with wire hangers, hairbrushes broken against her skin, lessons in cruelty disguised as discipline. Lancaster confirmed those accounts, but went further. He accused Crawford of creating a household ruled by terror, where submission was the only option. Substances fueled her rage, and violence became her method of control. To colleagues, she was commanding. To her family, she was merciless. She didn't raise children, Lancaster wrote. She raised survivors. But Lancaster's list didn't end with Crawford. One final name remained, and it would stun America the most. 14. Lucille Ball, the razor-edged smile. Lucille Ball, America's sweetheart, the queen of comedy whose laugh defined a generation. Her show, I Love Lucy, was pure joy. But Lancaster's secret journal described something far different. Once the cameras stopped rolling, he claimed, that famous laugh turned into a weapon. As head of Desolate Productions, she allegedly became a ruthless dictator. Lancaster described how she kept notebooks on every staff member, documenting their smallest mistakes, even how they knocked on her door. 3 strikes, and they were gone. Writers, too, weren't safe. One was ordered to rewrite an entire episode in 24 hours, only to be called into a meeting where Lucy laughed in his face before tossing the script in the trash. Lancaster even accused her of spying, installing hidden microphones in meeting rooms to catch whispers of dissent. Those caught criticizing her faced unpredictable punishments, often career-ending. Her laugh saved CBS, Lancaster concluded, but that same laugh destroyed countless souls behind the curtain. And so the list ended. 14 names, each a giant of Hollywood's golden age. Each accused by Burt Lancaster of cruelty hidden beneath fame. From Kirk Douglas to Lucille Ball, Lancaster's words painted a Hollywood that wasn't golden at all, but blood-stained with manipulation, fear, and abuse. Were these accusations truth, or were they the bitter reflections of a man disillusioned with the world he once helped build? Perhaps we will never know, but one thing remains undeniable. Hollywood's greatest illusion was never the films themselves. It was the people, the stars who smiled for the world while concealing darkness behind the curtain. So now we ask you, of all the names on Lancaster's chilling list, who do you believe was the most ruthless of them all? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because there are always more secrets waiting in the shadows of Hollywood.